It's these old farts, and for the moment, at least, we haven't had any technological issues, so that's a first. Um, one of the things we were talking about, we're going to talk about tonight, is immigration. Immigration in a larger sense, not so much um, whether some individual should cross the border or overstay their visa or whatever, but whether America benefits from immigration or not, as the case may be. So that's kind of the opening round, and because it's the old farts, the conversation will go with where the conversation goes. Um, Chuck, do you want to start us off?
Well, sure. Well, I would have to say that overall, I'm in favor of immigration as long as it's legal and properly done. That's my, I think we have a history of bringing in people coming into this country for a long time, but I think we failed over the last maybe 20 years as far as making whatever adjustments we need to make sure it's done the proper way. And that's my take on it at the moment. So I'll pass over to Omanon.
Thank you. Well, looking at the history of the United States, I think I agree with Chuck that we are a country of immigrants. I am one of those as well. And the reason that I would also add that because of immigration, there is a continued inflow of talent, particularly into the United States, and that keeps the innovation up front and moving. And you can see that while you can look at those all the startup companies. It is estimated that 7 out of 10 startups in the world are in the United States. Why is that the case? And that's a startling statistic. I heard some lecturer talk about that, and I was surprised. I was not surprised actually, but that kind of tells you a lot. And that when you look at the history of the United States, it does speak good about that. Immigration is an important item in keeping United States current and young. And I will let Colleen talk about it.
Oh, I am in favor of immigration as long as it's as we have control of it and stuff. I think that there's like Amanon said, there's a lot of people that come over as immigrants that have like a lot of talent and things like that to offer. And even those that come here looking for more, a better life, they also offer something. They bring their culture, their love, and there's also bad things that come with all this stuff if you're not controlling of it and trying to, I guess just our system is meant to vet out people that are not going to be good citizens and stuff like that. So I really think that immigration is a part of our fabric, and it's very, very beneficial for this country. And we do have to still keep control of our values and make sure our laws are fair and stuff. And I think we can find common ground, in all those areas, even, immigrants that want to be citizens and immigrants that just want to come here and, get some education and maybe take things back to their country. There's benefit all around of having the cultural differences that we have, for sure. So Paul, how about you?
Well, I think that, the fact is that most everybody in the United States is a function of immigration, with the exception of the quote Native Americans. And the country has over 300 million people now, and every one of them, not everyone, but the vast majority is a result of immigration. You know, there are, when you have that many people coming in over what, a couple of 100 years, 300 years maybe, there's certainly going to be people that you wish didn't come, but and or their descendants you're unhappy with, but in general, immigration has made the United States what it is, and it's a really formidable country with business and social ideas and education and all kinds of wonderful things. So I think it's bottom line is it's a a very big plus. Now, so I guess that's my thought for the time being.
Mhm.
It
Anybody
appears
else? Go ahead.
that the panel is in agreement that immigration is a positive thing for the country. I wanted to add in a little bit to say that the people who immigrate are not the dregs of society, but in many cases, the people who are some of the best of the areas from which they come, because number one, they've got the energy and the initiative to change if they can't change their own country or their own area, they're ready to change themselves to go into something new that gives them a better opportunity. Number two, they don't come from starving people. It takes a lot of money to immigrate. The Irish in the 1840s, the people who were literally starving didn't have the money to get on a ship because the ship wasn't free. The people of my ancestors who came in the early 1900s, I don't have a great deal of detail of what happened to them, but I know that they came on a ship. And again, it wasn't free. And to get to the ship required a great deal of effort and money. So my view of immigrants is good, bad, or indifferent. They are people who are willing and able to make a difference. The other point that several of us was making had to do with coming in the proper way, and over time, the proper way has changed radically. My 3 minutes are up, so I'll come back to that a little bit later.
Let me add to those 3 minutes there, what you just said. It's kind of interesting that there was a time when people would be given a piece of land out in the west and to homestead, and if they survived a year, that was their place. And
I remember that, yeah.
And similarly, you had the Chinese laborers who came in, who made possible connecting the East and the West. And you can see all this. And what you brought up is the motivation to change and motivation to be creative. All those elements are actually what is actually brought in by the immigrants, whether they come in with no education or they come with education. If they come through the proper channels, they will bring that motivation and that drive that then propels the United States as a whole to a newer level. That's what I would say. Now, about the drugs of the society you brought up, that it reminded me of the senator giving a statement in The Godfather about Michael Corleone. He was talking about how Michael Corleone is a upstanding veteran, and not everybody is in mafia. They are very well they serve our country and all that. I thought that was kind of interesting juxtaposition to what you said. And I give up now. Time to Chuck.
Well, I think we, obviously all of us agree that immigration on its surface is a good thing. And I think we're all in agreement that that's predicated on the fact that it's done properly. And at the same time, for the people my understanding, there are thousands of people that essentially are in a line trying to get into this country properly. And for the most part, it could cost them thousands of dollars to get into this country properly. And it's very unfortunate that we've allowed the system, and Bob made some mention to it about issues, but over the last 20 years, I'm guessing, is that we've not handled the situation well, and that we've got essentially hundreds of thousands of people crossing the southwest border with none of the requirements that these other people who are standing in line, and some of them for years, to try to get in. And essentially, they're not paying anything other than they're paying with their lives to these coyotes who are holding them hostage, and where they're going to have to pay this money back over time once they get into this country. And that's very unfortunate and very dangerous. One of the numbers I heard recently that are, in addition to that, that there's somewhere between 85,000 and 100,000 missing children that have come across the border, that the U.S. government has no knowledge of where these kids are. And they lost track of them. There's all kinds of issues, and both parties are guilty of not working this out before it gets to the point it has. But I'm sorry, but I think the Biden administration's been terrible on what they've done since they've taken over with immigration. And I'll pass this on to Paul.
Chuck, all I wanted to say was, can you just get a little bit closer to wherever it is because you're breaking up. I don't get all you're saying.
Okay, moves closer.
It's not that I disagree or agree or disagree. It's just I couldn't quite hear.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I do have a comment to. I'm sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
I guess yeah, a lot of these people that are coming in from the south across the southern border, they're basically coming in because their lives are threatened while they're in their own countries, and they're coming. Yes, they're coming without any real. A lot of them are coming with probably the majority without any talents to work, and so they are a burden. But maybe we should start thinking about sending U.S. military into some of these countries and getting rid of the warlords and the drug lords and the gangs. I don't know. That's probably not a good. It's probably not feasible to go in and invade a country and start trying to do the policing for them. But something really has to be done about that. I think a lot of these Central and South American countries are incapable of handling their problem. Because then again, we seem to be incapable of handling our problem too, with crime. And I don't know. That was a diversion, I guess, but
Chuck, I wanted to address one of the things you were talking about, the coming in the proper way and the waiting lists of people coming into the country. I'll use the 1920s as an example because I know a little bit more about it than the current laws, although the current laws in large measure are based on the laws passed in the 1920s. What they said in the 1920s was the nature of America is changing because of all these people coming in. They had just had a wave of Italians, and now they were dealing with a wave of people from Eastern Europe. And so they said, we like America the way it is. We don't want it to change. So what they did was they passed a series of laws saying that there would be a limited amount of immigration, and the immigration would be based on the country of origin. And if, let's say at the time, I don't have the actual numbers, but let's say at the time that that England was 40% of the of America had English roots. So 40% of all immigrants that could come in would be from England. And if they didn't, if let's say 100,000 was the number that they were going to bring in, that's an arbitrary number. That meant that 40,000 would be from England. And if there weren't 40,000 English people who wanted to come in a given year, then they didn't, then we had that much less immigration. The least number was, well, the two least numbers were from Asia and from Mexico. And so it was deliberately set so that there would be a tiny, tiny portion of the immigrants would come in from those two countries, those two areas. And so you wonder why some people are standing in line for 10 years, 5 years to get in, and other people can walk right in whenever. In large measure, that's why.
I'd like to go to Colleen. I disagree with some of the stuff you're saying, Paul. I mean, Bob, and I also have some issues with what Paul said. Well, let's go to Colleen.
Well, I was wanted to dovetail a little bit off of Amanon when you mentioned about the homesteading, and when we visited Joshua Tree National Park, part of the tour on the way to the park, they were pointing out all these little homesteads that people were placed in, and they it basically you're given a piece of land, and if you don't work it, then you starve. You don't really get the benefit of that land. But I think, and in some cases, when we bring people in, we don't give them like a piece of land and expect them to, work. Now we're bringing them in and giving them an EBT card, and they don't really have any investment in actually, working hard and building something like the early immigrants did. They, you hear the stories all the time about the Italians, the Irish, and the other groups that would come in, and they were the ones building these skyscrapers and doing all the stonework and everything, in all the cities and stuff. They worked hard, and they didn't expect anybody to give them anything. They wanted to work, and we're kind of creating a subculture of people, of immigrants especially. They think that when they come here, that they're going to get stuff. They're not going to and maybe never have to work for it. Just they're going to get things. And I mean, that can be detrimental too, because, it's like, when somebody that you're getting something and that you think that it's going to help somebody else, the word gets back to other people in similar situations, and they come thinking that that's what they're going to get, as well. So in serving, the benefit that we used to get from immigration is very diminished, I think, now. Even though the potential is still there, we still share and we still get some benefit, of as a country by, having immigrants come through. We still have to, I think it kind of does them a disservice when they think that the only thing they want to do to come here, in some cases, they're just looking for that, the benefits and stuff of coming. And I mean, anybody that's been here, even citizens that are here, you work hard and you don't get to have things unless you've worked for it. and stuff in a lot of cases. So, I mean, immigrants, I think some of them want to be here, and then other ones want to be here so they can get their freebies, um, and stuff like that. That's, I was just thinking when I brought up the homesteading, I remember seeing them, and they were dotted all around the hillsides and stuff like that. And I just thought, it is a nice way to, bring somebody in. You bring them in, set them up with a place to live, and then, you have to work your land. And you just, I think if you have to work for something, there's some value that and character, I think, that gets built into some of that. So, I mean, even though we're getting overwhelmed right now with, with the immigrants coming over the border, and stuff, where that's where the laws and things that come in that have been in place, if they're enforced, then that kind of controls things, and lets us have a chance to kind of process people and, get them in and settled and stuff like that, instead of being overwhelmed, and just, have them flow in rather than make a controlled entry into the country. So that, not because we don't want them to come, it's because you have to have some control over that.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, that's exactly what I was trying to say earlier, that the proper way there has to be a proper way to do all this, given that right now, you look at the southern border, it looks like an invasion. It looks like everybody wants to come in. But what is the response of the country? That means the laws that were set up long time ago are no longer working, or they're not being enforced, and so we have a problem. So that problem needs to be solved, as Paul pointed out. That a lot of these problems are because of the domestic issues that have been there in the Central American countries, the South American, some of those countries. And I hate to say this, but a lot of that turmoil has also been due to what our companies did down there. So I think it is a long-term issue that the United States should deal with in a way that fixes the issues down there. So maybe Paul's answer to send the military may be right, but maybe not, maybe do something else, but fix that issue there so that we don't have these people come in the way they are without that incentive other than just coming in. So that's what I completely agree, because it's not, when I read about these homesteads, I would think that not everybody would have actually survived that, because you have to work the land, live out there, and be subjected to the weather, and subjected to be living in a dugout, and subjected to all the Native American invasions. And it's not easy, was not an easy life if you read all that. So given all that, that means there was that motivation to survive. And given that, they survived and they settled the land. But right now, we have to fix the problem somehow. And I agree with Chuck that both parties have to do something. And Paul's solution may be the only solution, send the army down, but I don't know whether that will work. But I think something has to be done to fix that issue down there, which is mostly domestic. And they don't seem to be able to do it. And maybe United States as a common goal can show them the way how to do it.
One of the things about under the Obama administration, I believe, the southern border was being overrun from Mexico, not from Central and South America, but from Mexico. And one of the things that was done was NAFTA, which essentially said that goods produced in Mexico or Canada could come in without duties. And this encouraged US companies to build plants in northern Mexico, and oh, by the way, in Canada. And the net result was, and I think this was actually the unspoken motivation, was that suddenly people weren't flooding in from Mexico because the jobs and the better life existed in their homeland, where they were wanted, where they understood the language, etc., etc. If we were able to expand the concept of NAFTA to, let's say for the moment, Central America or possibly South America, then I think we accomplish what it is that both Paul and Omanon were talking about. But we have to be careful that we don't do what we did in the early 1900s, which was have United Fruit set up a government to do what they wanted done and totally messing up whatever native government they might have been established. I don't know how you control that, but I think that that's got some potential.
I'd like to get Paul to get in there, but before you speak, Paul, I'd just like to say I don't think it's feasible that we can send the military over the southern border against these other countries. I think we can do a lot better job upon our border in preventing people from coming in, and that's what the Trump administration tried to do with the wall that a lot of people on the left made fun of, but the wall was serving a purpose. The other thing you said, Paul, was in reference to these people coming over who are having issues in their home countries and being terrorized, or I forget how you exactly phrase that. And I'm sure there's a percentage of that is true with those people. Maybe 30%, could be 60% is true. But there are people not just coming from South America or Central America, they're coming from all over the world. I forgot what the number was last I heard, but I know it's over 90 different countries. People are coming in. And I think many of them are coming in just to take advantage of get the freebies that this government will hand out to them. And then we're not talking about a certain percentage of them that are potential terrorists. One of the things I also recently heard that the levels of polio and tuberculosis is rising in this country for the first time. So I mean, we're multiplying issues in areas that we shouldn't be having to get an issue about. I'll turn it over to you, Paul.
One of the reasons that tuberculosis and polio and all that stuff is on the rise is there's a certain group of Americans that don't believe in inoculation, and so that's one problem. As far as the groups that are coming in, yes, the Europeans and the Asians and to some extent the Africans that are coming in are they're coming in with the right attitude of they want to work for it, whereas the people that are coming in from the southern border are desperate to stay alive. That's what they are. They're not looking for a handout. They're just desperate to stay alive because they are getting killed in their own country. And I, at least that's what I'm seeing. And so that's why I think we have to do something about the Western Hemisphere. We got to help some of these other countries restore law and order because they're completely lawless right now.
I'd like to pose a question for everybody. We've got approximately somewhere between, I've heard different numbers, anywhere between 320 million to 350 million people in this country right now. So what is the number that is acceptable to you to bring that level of population up? Should we allow it to get to 400 million? I may have said, I was talking about 320 million or 350 million. Should we go to 450 million or 500 million? I mean, what is the number that's acceptable to you that you feel we're capable of handling? Bob, what do you think? How many people should we plan on having coming into this country?
I really don't have a number, and later on,
It's unlimited.
yeah, well, later on in the conversation, I was going to ask something fairly similar, but I do want to make a point. People coming over the border, or people coming in and overstaying their visa, which is, at least for the longest time, was a vast majority of the quote illegal population. They are working, and many of them are coming to this country without any skills. I don't remember, I think it was Omanan was pointing that out. But then they're finding jobs. They're doing dishwashing and working in restaurants. They're working in nursing homes. As a matter of fact, if you go into a nursing home, you see a great percentage of these people don't speak English. And if you get to know them a little bit, some of the things that I do, I try to help out people, elderly shut-ins, and occasionally they end up in a nursing home, and I try to keep in touch with them. But the people working, taking care of these people, are in large measure the undocumented. They're working for diddly squat money. So the whole family is doing something. So it's not that there are some. Anybody who says anything absolutely is guaranteed to be wrong. But the majority are working. They're trying to survive in a very expensive environment. Ron DeSantis just sponsored a bill in Florida saying that anybody who does anything to support in any way, including giving them a ride someplace, undocumented people, is guilty of a crime and will be prosecuted. And the net result appears to be that immigrants who are truck drivers are saying we won't drive in Florida. Immigrants who are farm workers are saying we can't go to Florida, we can't harvest the crops. So if you're worried about inflation in the food, be prepared, because Florida, which is a major producer of certainly citrus, but other foods as well, will not be producing anywhere near as much as they have been, because we're attacking the concept of immigration. And
I think what you point out with DeSantis, he's a graduate of Yale and Harvard Law School, and from all I can, from everything that comes out of his mouth, he's a bloody idiot. Everything he says is wrong. It's diametrically opposite to the way the United States works. I'm sorry. It's just, it's hard to believe that the Florida people can vote for him.
I think, Paul, you're trying to defame somebody by calling them an idiot is improper in my mind. I don't think that should be. I think you can choose some better words than that. But I think Omanan, what do you have to?
Well, I was gonna.
Can I respond to that? Because if he's not an idiot, he's evil. I'd rather call him an idiot than evil. Go ahead.
What do you have to say?
What I was going to add to what Bob said, we have a lot of landscaping people who don't speak English, and you have when Mitt Romney was running for either governor or president. He was actually, it was discovered that his landscaping people were illegally non-citizens, let me put it this way. And so I don't know what happened to that story later on, but I still maintain this, that you do have our lawmakers have a duty to reframe the immigration laws in such a way that they are fair and they allow certain numbers to come in. Now, that addresses what Chuck was talking about. How many people can we support? Now, think about this. The people, we need younger people to be working to contribute to the Social Security Fund. Unless you have a certain, I don't know what that number is. Unless you have a certain critical number, Social Security Fund is going to go bankrupt pretty quickly. I don't know when. And there are always people have projections about that, but that probably is going to tie in what number will be the right number. And I don't know what that number is.
I mean, I think your point about the young taking care of the old, most of us, with the exception of Colleen, are in that situation or about to be. Colleen, fairly soon when she retires, will begin to see what we're talking about. There does need to be an influx of the young, and ideally, they come in with skills that we need. And I think part of what's going on is the feeling that these people are coming in without the skills. But then if you look at it from another point of view, if they come in with skills, then they're replacing Americans who were looking for the same job. There is no happy solution to any of this. The other part of it is, do we have a responsibility to bring the people in and give them a chance? When my grandparents came, they came with a sponsor. The sponsor basically found a place to live and gave them a job and took a percentage of what they made. They were essentially indentured servants, but their kids were given the opportunity to make something of themselves. My mother didn't speak English until she went to school. She taught her mother how to speak English from what she had learned. She managed to get a college degree, no cost, City College of New York. Brooklyn College is a subset of it. My father was in a somewhat similar situation. He got a degree, again through Brooklyn College, no cost. They emigrated out of Brooklyn, New York, into the Eastern United States, and they made meaningful contributions to the society, which in a sense helped to pay the investment that the United States made in them. And I think if you look at every immigrant group, you'll find similar stories. It won't be everybody. It won't be everybody, nor will it be everybody who's a drag on society, or worse yet, someone who is an active problem. I have one grandfather who was a thug for the painters union in New York. He made, I could justify it, given a little bit of time, his contribution to America, but it's much easier to just say he was a thug, he was a gangster, low level.
Well, I think we should go to Colleen. Colleen, do you have an idea how many people this country can handle? Figuring that we're at somewhere in an average, maybe 340 million people now. Do you have any idea how, if you had to put a number on it, can you figure a number?
Well, I don't know if I can think of a number, but I think it's kind of based on how well we're doing as a country. Like if our economy is tanked, if it's not supporting any kind of growth, then you really can't bring more people into an economy like that, because it just becomes a burden on on the resources. And then it also takes away some of the resources that that are available for if they do come in and they can get a job, then there's there's usually in a good economy, there's plenty of things to go around. But if our economy right now is if we're in a recession and things like that, then I think it's a good time to maybe put the brakes on some of that. But also the other thing that's been kind of rolling in my head is what Chuck said about the kids. If those kids didn't walk off on their own. And if there was a number applied to it, then at some point we knew that there was that many kids, and now we see they're not around. So I feel like if there's always going to be people that will exploit children. If there's a problem with kids coming over and then all of a sudden disappearing, I think that's enough of a reason to just put the brakes on this stuff right now, and just say, look, if bad people are going to come in and do things bad to kids, then guess what? Everything gets shut down, and we're not bringing any more people into the border because there's bad people doing stuff. It's kind of like peer pressure, like if everybody starts to get the idea that the United States isn't going to be a party to children being exploited, and taken advantage of over our border, then it'll stop. People that really want to come here for the right reasons will be here, and we can take those people in, and with the right leadership, I guess our economy gets better, and then there's room to bring more people in. We've got plenty of space. It's if we don't cram everybody into the city, get them into places where they can make a life. But I mean, I think the kids are a huge issue, and if that's going to continue to happen, I think you just shut it down and stop bringing people in until they can figure out where all these kids are going.
Colleen, remember a few years ago, we had something called family separation. It was policy of the US government that when families came over the border, the children were forcibly taken from their parents. And as it turns out, there was no paperwork done, so there was no way to identify who the parents were or who the kids were. When that policy was ended, there was a major effort to try to reunite the families, but there's 1,000 kids that they have absolutely no idea who they belong to. So this was US policy. And Donald Trump, in his town hall last week, said that was the right thing to do, because if people know you're going to take their kids, they won't come. So that was a deliberate policy of the US government.
You're talking, again, Bob, you're talking about 1,000 kids. And
that we know about right now, who, after several years of attempts to reunite them with their family, this is 1,000 left over. I don't have the number from before,
right,
but there's a lot more.
There's some other clarification upon that policy. But I mentioned earlier that they're saying there's 85,000 today, 85,000 to 100,000 kids missing. There's no paper trail, nothing. So I think it's much worse than before. One thing I want to touch on, we're getting late, but was that we haven't spoken of at all, is about the drugs that are coming in this country, especially fentanyl, that's costing the lives of thousands of people, and coming through Mexico, mostly coming through the avenues of China, and that how that's destroying things also. What do you think, Paul?
I think we have to do something about it.
But do you agree it's a problem?
Of course, it's probably the biggest problem we have.
Okay, well, we haven't mentioned it till now. So how can it be the biggest? None of us have mentioned it till now.
Well, the assumption,
because we were talking about immigration, not drugs.
Well, immigration, the drugs are part of the immigration issue.
Chuck, I think you're right that we need to have a something that on drugs. We need to have an old farts on drugs, and we need to do something about it. But that doesn't. I don't think that has anything to do with immigration.
Well, it does actually. It's a residual. It's the same thing with the missing kids. It's crime. It's stuff like that happens with these things because everybody knows our border is porous. So anybody that's got any kind of ill will against the United States, they're going to find a way to get through that border. and get their products through whatever they may be, because there's money to be made. And, you know, it is part of this. It is a huge part of it. We did not have problems like this when the borders were tighter. There's always going to be some element of it, but the border being wide open is just you know, it's just you're announcing to the world that, like, if you have anything that you want to, you know, get into the United States quick, then you just head over that border and you're going to find a way in one way or the other, because they're crossing in the rivers, through the bushes, and no one's going through a border patrol or a border crossing. They're just finding any place that they can get across. And we can't cover everything. There's no wall. There's nothing there to stop them. So yeah,
the majority of drugs are not coming
How
in
long has
over
this
the
been?
southern border. They're coming in by ship and by boat.
You're wrong, Bob. I've heard you say this before, but you're wrong. That's not the case. Don't go out looking on your computer now. Just speak on what you know.
What I know is, and I've seen this multiple times in multiple places,
Well, you're looking
is
in the
that the
wrong
vast
places.
majority of drugs come in from, because just the vast volume of drugs coming over, which, as we were saying a moment ago, it would be a good subject for an old farts in the future. An individual can't carry enough to make more a minor dent in things. It's coming in by the shipload, and that's not the southern border or the northern border for that
You're
matter.
promoting misinformation, Bob.
Well, I was going to look it up, and you said not to.
Well, that's because we don't have an unlimited amount of time.
But
So-
just to
so
add
if
to
you-
this,
If you can't prove that it's coming in from the southern border, why did you say it?
I didn't say I can't prove it. Bob's the one that says he can prove this thing by that it's coming overseas. I didn't say I couldn't prove it. Just I can't prove it right now for you, but I'll get that information for all of you.
Oh, and I will do
Yeah,
the same.
I'd like
You
to
do the
see it.
same, Bob.
We'll have dueling
Next time we
emails.
get together, we can compare notes.
one,
We
one
only
thing,
got about 10 minutes left here,
Right.
so.
well, one thing I was going to say is that the drug lords actually bring in drugs using submarines so that nobody can detect them. And they bring it in the boats, as Bob pointed out. But then it's possible they also bring it using the mules that come across as human mules that come across the southern border.
They got
So
tractor
I
trail.
don't know the data actually.
They got tractor trailers that are coming in with drugs in trucks.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's
but
you have
that's not
multiple
immigration.
modalities. You have
That's-
multiple modalities.
Yeah,
It's
the
being
trucks have
smuggled
nothing
in
to
by
do with
a
immigration.
combination of people that are doing things.
Well, one of the things we have to understand is if I drive a truck that is disguised as some goods, let's say food, and underneath the food is half a ton of fentanyl, that's not an immigrant. That's not somebody who's crossed the Rio Grande and putting up their hand when they get across saying, "Hey, I want asylum." That is
Isn't
a
that
totally
somebody
different
taking
process.
advantage of the problem on the border? That's
So
someone
that-
who takes advantage of that, because we don't have enough coverage to stop people from doing it. So they're opportunistic. They're gonna drive a truck through there as fast as they can and hope they don't get stopped. But
Well, they're
that's,
going to get stopped. That's a given because they're on the road. There isn't any way to avoid it. They're hoping they don't get inspected. I know factually, multiple times we've, particularly in the San Diego area, there are tunnels that are dug across the border and into warehouses and things with essentially trains full of stuff that comes through. And occasionally a human being, but it's mostly drugs. Huh?
There are tunnels in Texas and Arizona and New Mexico also.
By the way, the wall is going to help you there.
But it's not going to solve it 100%, but it's going to do better than nothing.
This
If
is
you invested that money in other things, you might in fact get more bang for your buck. Huh?
Those other things have certainly done a lot for the last 2 or 3 years.
I don't know that they've been done, but if I If I put in something to try to detect tunnels, and there are ways, I don't know what they are, but there are ways to detect a tunnel underneath things. And if you ran that over the border, you might find a fair number of tunnels that exist that are being used for drugs rather than for immigrants, because drugs are worth a hell of a lot more money. If I'm going to make an investment of a tunnel, I'm not going to do it just so some poor schlub can come across and then put up his hand saying, please, I'm an immigrant and I want to be in the United States.
This is what I was going to say, is that in order for us to fix the border issue, we do need more agents, we need more technology, we need several things which government only can do, but they have to put their minds together so that the money is available, resources are available, so that they, for example, a truck comes through, if you don't have enough inspectors, a lot of things will get missed. So if you have enough agents at the border, things can be detected much better, and the trucks won't go through, and policies have to be made. But that's where government has to do something quickly, and so that things can be achieved.
Paul, what kind of grade would you give Mayorkas for his performance as in his role?
I'm sorry, what kind of grade would I give who?
Do you have
For what?
a grade level you could give border chief?
DHS, the
Majorca.
secretary.
Mayorkas?
Yeah, Majorca.
Can you give him the grade from?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know who Mayorkas is.
He's the head of the DHS, Homeland Security.
You've not seen him at all? Bob, what would you give him for a grade?
Does he have enough people?
Whose responsibility is that? They have the people.
Congress.
Congress.
They're the ones who say, here's X number of dollars to spend in this department.
What has he said about the border? He has said that his border is under control repeatedly.
I'd love to know what his definition of invasion is. That would be a good question for him. You know, if we're not being invaded, like, you know, then what is going on down there?
To answer your question, Chuck, I'd probably give him a C. I might have given him a higher grade if he had done a better job of public relations, because a lot of what we're talking about are photo ops, are photo images. One of the things I wanted to, I'm going to try to switch the subject very quickly to say, one of the things that I think is fair that the border states are being overrun economically with the immigrants coming in. And I think that one of the things that Congress needs to do is to find some money to contribute to those border states so that they would be in a position to be able to house and keep track of the people who are coming, whether we want them to or not. They are coming. And if you keep shoving them back into Mexico, then you have to give Mexico some money so that they can be so that they can deal with the problem. What I would not want to see is the same kind of camps for 60 years, 70 years as exists in the Arab states around Israel, where all the Palestinians who, for one reason or another, were forced to leave Israel were placed in camps, and armed guards keep them from going out of those camps into the regular country. That is unacceptable in my mind.
Okay,
sorry,
what kind of
I made
grade
my
would you?
speech.
What kind of grade would you give Mayorkas?
Not very high one. I mean,
I'd be at an F.
yeah,
I would go lower if I could.
Yeah,
How about you,
there isn't much protection happening, and the Homeland Security was really it was really set up, in these kind of, to take care of these kind of situations. And they should be more involved in getting the border secure. That's the only way you can have homeland security, is if you can control your borders. And we obviously can't, so we need to do something. But no, he's not doing what he needs to do.
Did the previous guy do?
So we need to give him more money and more people so that he can do it. Congress needs to give him the money to do it. Hire another 20,000 people.
We're
Or
hiring
whatever.
85, we're hiring 85,000 IRS agents. Maybe they should be border people instead.
Well, maybe
The
they'd have more
85,000
money if Trump would pay his taxes, and the only way to get him to pay his taxes is to have IRS agents going through his taxes.
Yeah.
And
Without-
the Biden corruption family would pay their share of taxes, everything would be fine.
And
Well,
if
without-
beggars were
without going-
horses, then
It's time to stop
horses-
that stuff.
Yeah,
It's time to
without-
stop that stuff.
Yeah, with-
Chuck, do you realize that, never mind, it's useless.
Well, I was going to give a grade to this guy because Chuck asked me. I was not going to give any grade, but I would support what Paul said, that he needs to have a policy, and that policy has to be dictated by Congress with all the resources that are necessary to stop the invasion. And that means a lot more agents, a lot more resources, and then let us give him a grade. Right now, I don't know how to give him a grade.
You base the grade on what the results that he's getting.
But
So obviously you must be satisfied that what the numbers are.
no,
I-
that's why I kept on saying there's an invasion. I am not satisfied with it. I don't like the situation, but I would like to give him the resources, then see what he is doing. I mean, that is what I would base, but because I have no idea what he's doing. Right?
Have you heard him asking for resources?
I have not paid attention to him or anybody else, because I know what I see at the border, things are not being done. And why not? I know that there are no resources. I would like more agents. I would like more technology, more resources, different types of resources available at the border. And that needs a lot of bureaucracy. That needs a lot of money. And that means the government has to have the resolve to fix the issue. And I don't see that happening. That's my sorry state of grade for everybody, not just that guy.
Chuck, can I ask you a question? Can you evaluate a batter? Somebody in a baseball game standing at the plate as a batter without a bat. He's standing there with his hands, and the pitcher's throwing the pitch, and
I would expect the batter to ask for a bat. No different than I would expect Mallorca to ask for additional help, which I haven't heard him saying anything about.
well, I can tell you that one of the things that was in the I can't remember the term for it, the big bill that Biden got passed, the Inflation Reduction Act,
Which is a lot of baloney.
well, they put in there they needed more border guards. They needed more people on the
Most of that's
southern
a
border.
climate control issue.
Well, there was a whole bunch of things in there, but one of the things that was in there was, in fact, this border thing. They were trying to get some more money down there. I don't know what has happened with that. I do know it was part of the package. So people have been asking, maybe not loud enough, maybe it's getting drowned out by the idea that, a million people are coming across tomorrow, which it turned out didn't happen. But still a lot of people. I'm not questioning that at
It's only
all.
like 600,000 or 700,000.
Not yesterday, maybe the day before, but it wasn't yesterday. I think that we are failing some of the states. In part, it's their fault because they're not asking for the money. In the same way as when Florida takes taxpayer money to go to Texas to get somebody to fly to Florida so he can then send them to New York or wherever it is he's sending them. I don't think that's a proper use of the money, but I do understand the PR value of it, because what they're trying to say